My guest today has spent 30 years watching fly fishing lurch from how many did you catch to should you have caught any at all. Andrew Flitcroft, editor-in-chief of Trout and Salmon magazine for 33 years, has seen the whole shift from the inside. And keep listening, because we're giving away a loop track rod if you can name the digital magazine he now edits. Season 3 of The Last Salmon is in partnership with Loop, driving change for wild fish and wild places.
You felt a real responsibility to, keeping the magazine going for start in a tough environment, and also to sort of uphold the values of previous editors as well. So my previous editor, Sandy, who I look up to and still do, Sandy Leventon, his name is, he was an inspiration to me, and he taught me many things, not least to have huge respect for the fish that we catch and how we handle them, despite dragging them through the water on a hook. You can still respect a fish.
Absolutely.
And when you catch one, you just look after it. In those days, obviously, in the start, we used to kill fish, but you could still have respect for that fish, and you would dispatch a bit quickly and humanely. So he taught me all of that, and also just about curating good content and good words. I think what I brought to Trout and Salmon was probably the artistic side of me was to improve the look of the magazine. And I think that's something that I feel that I maybe achieved. And Trout and Salmon always looked, pretty good. The photography was great, and if the words were as well, then hopefully people enjoyed it.
So, just picking up on what how Sandy influenced you there, and shared with you a huge respect for the fish, even in the days, as you said, that you were dispatching them. There must have been a more blasé approach then. I'm talking about salmon in particular here, where pre-catch and release, where they were all every fish was pretty much knocked on their head. Did nobody have an inkling about what was coming down the pipe with regards to numbers? How was it reconciled amongst the angling community to kill everything that you catch, especially knowing, I think they did know, right, that the numbers were decreasing over the decades?
Yes, they did, but no one thought about it then, really. People were eating, they were catching to eat. Some were catching to sell, and pay for their ticket for the following season.
Right.
If they were selling when I started my fishing in the borders of Scotland, and while none of my family fished, they used to get sea trout from the locals, and I would always see a sea trout on the draining board in the summertime, and it was just normal, no one saw it coming. And there are obviously numerous factors. At the time, there were also netsmen, weren't there?
Yeah.
On certain rivers, there were netsmen taking thousands and thousands of fish, and there was still a big surplus for anglers to catch and kill. But we're seeing the legacy of that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose when you put it like that, and when the netsmen and the netting stations are taking the lion's share, I suppose anglers, and I would have felt the same, would have felt like their quarry would have not put a dent in the numbers compared to the netsmen.
I would say that most anglers feel that they don't put a dent in the numbers, but we have to be seen to be doing our bit now, and I think that's the way. That's where we are at the moment. I think there are many reasons for the decline, I'm sure, and I'm not an expert for all of those, but you can see that there are collectively we need to do everything.
Absolutely.
To restore salmon.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think to be seen, the performative nature of catch and release is just as important as the conservation element of it. If anglers are to be taken seriously, I think, as voices of the river, as conservation voices, and having their opinions heard and respected by those that can potentially change policy, we do need to be seen respecting these fish and letting them go and letting them continue on their journey. So that's,
Yes.
yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's as performative as well as it is conservational. Your coverage of salmon and fly fishing in that magazine, extensive coverage. I mean, it's such a brilliant data pot, isn't it? You've got 70, 80 years there of literature all about salmon
Yes.
angling. There is no,
Yes.
it's fantastic. What can we learn from that? And what have you seen in your time there, which is a big chunk of that time with regards to salmon angling? I know we've spoken about catch and release. What else can we learn as salmon anglers in 2026 from what you've learned from trout salmon?
I think that obviously with trout and salmon, you've got the fishing reports, and you can actually, if you were minded to go back and look at the performance of certain rivers, there is a pattern there. And lots of people used to collect those fishing reports, despite them being slightly out of date, being a monthly magazine. Things have changed, and you can get data really quickly now. But it does give you an overall picture of the lay of the land, really, in terms of where salmon are, where they were. There are so many different peaks and troughs in various rivers. What I think what you get from it is that we are seeing peaks and troughs in our salmon. We all get excited when there's a bumper week somewhere, and 20 fish caught in a week. But it's just peaks and troughs are there, whereas before it was a level playing field. In you're talking about the 80s and 90s, it was normal to get those sort of numbers, and now we've seen that decline, and the whole thing's changing. It's so volatile.
Interestingly, you talk about and trout salmon is certainly as famous for those rod catches and those river reports in the back of the magazine as it is for everything else. And at one time, that stuff was like wisdom is to cricket, or it was the Bible.
Yes.
How do you feel about the EA, those in positions of policy change that are still referring to rod catches? I'm not obviously pertaining just to trout salmon here, magazine, but to be using rod catches as a metric on which to infer salmon runs. By that I mean rod catches are written by fishermen, so there's that.
Yes.
In the modern digital age, obviously we get that information instantaneously. Personally, I think it's archaic to be using rod catches now when these numbers are so sensitive and this fish is so in crisis as a species. We should be lobbying for fish counters on every single salmon river that we have. I get very alarmed when I speak to the EA about salmon and trying to lobby for change, and they tell me all is fine because, I don't know, the rod catches on the chalk streams for the salmon last year weren't too bad. And I'm saying, well, you're relying on the fishermen for everything, and fishermen are important, and we're the voices and custodians of the river to a certain extent. Though our metrics for how many fish are left, how many fish are running, should be supplementary as data. It should not be the yardstick by which we measure these runs. Do you agree with that?
Well, you wouldn't run a business if you didn't know what stock you had, would you?
No, you wouldn't. That's a great analogy.
You need clear data, especially now when things are so on a knife edge. Surely that there must be that's if there was the money to do it, there should be a counter on most rivers. You go to Ireland, and there are lots of counters on rivers there. They've got clear data. And they're even, they're looking at it, and they're judging whether they keep rivers open or closed through temperature and various things all the time. It's far better managed, I think.
I think so, and I think I would go as far as to say is that if any local campaign project or NGO involved in a salmon river, trying to save the salmon, trying to save the river, that's what they should be raising funds for. Is the first thing is a fish counter at the relevant place on that river,
Yes.
because that data is invaluable, and we cannot be relying on fishermen as a metric. 50% of you were talking about Ireland and the wonderful the progressive data that comes off those rivers, and yet 50% of Irish rivers are closed to salmon fishing this year so far. I mean, it's crazy.
Yes.
Is that because of
Yes.
the data they're getting from these more sensitive instruments, or is that some sort of blunt instrument, do you think?
I think, although I don't like to say it, I think that if salmon are in that much trouble, should we be fishing for them? I think to leave, there's an argument that we shouldn't, and I think that I don't blame them for closing the rivers down if that's going to benefit the fish.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's coming down the line, depending on numbers, depending on a myriad of pressures that the fish are facing in certain salmon catchments. Absolutely, angling needs to be considered as something, as a tool that we can use to sort of relieve some pressure at various points for these fish. I couldn't agree more.
Well, I think also that it should we should be looking. It shouldn't be a reactive thing. It should be a preventative model that we should be looking at. So we should be doing as much as we can. It's not about saving the salmon as a species. You don't just want, one or two salmon in a river. You want lots of, you want abundance as much as possible. And that's what we should be trying to achieve.
It,
And sometimes I do feel that, some of the work I see is, oh, we're okay. We've got enough salmon in the river to do this. Well, that's not good enough. I don't think,
no.
you look at the Spey now, they've just had 2 pollution incidents. There needs to be mitigation for events like that. You just don't know are going to happen.
I couldn't agree more. And it's a double-edged sword, though, isn't it? I mean, we had Matt Hayes on recently, and of course, he quite rightly was advocating for as many people on the river. And Yvonne Chouinard will say the same thing. Just get as many people fishing as possible, because then we have an army of conservationists. So in these, dare I say, overcrowded rivers of the UK and Ireland, how do we police that? How do we go, okay, this river here, we should stuff and encourage. We should encourage anglers. We should encourage as much salmon angling as possible in order to create awareness, conservation. But actually, at the same time, this river here has only got as an unsustainable amount of fish, so we have to put a salmon angling moratorium on that. It's going to be very difficult, I think, to manage both those messages effectively. I wouldn't know how to do it. You got any thoughts on that?
No, it's a very, very difficult one, isn't it? Because in where I've just been I've just been fishing on the River Navy in Scotland, right at the very north of Scotland. Not a huge population. Very few rods 12 rods on the whole river. So it's rested. It's not getting the pressure. You saw it after lockdown. After COVID, when the rivers opened up again, you saw, there was a bonanza for a start, and then the pressure gradually creeped in again, and the normal pressure that is, and catches go down. And I think there's so much pressure on fish, and that's, like you say, if you're trying to encourage people, you can't then reduce that pressure. Or how do you reduce that pressure? It's a very difficult balance.
It is a difficult balance, but we certainly do need a wider toolbox, don't we? If we're going to save salmon angling and grow it as a pastime, as an industry, and save the salmon themselves. And to that end, speaking of tools, catch and release, we touched upon it earlier. Over your tenureship at Trout Salmon, you will have seen that huge change come into force. Obviously, it's very contentious still in certain places like Ireland and Norway. What are your thoughts on compulsory catch and release, which is ever more being debated for salmon?
I don't think that it should be compulsory. I think it should be voluntary, but the peer pressure will do its job. I think people, that knock fish on the head now, kill fish, will get a lot of pressure from other anglers, and it won't happen as much as it used to. Obviously, we'll never go back to what it was. Um, so I think already, you look at most rivers, it's 90% catch and release, and I think that's pretty good. And I think if you actually put more restrictions on it, you may get rid of more anglers. So we're not growing the pool.
Yeah,
I just think it's educate. It's about education.
I think so. And I think
And
you're
I think also, the older generation who killed fish, they're no longer fishing as much now, and they won't be. And the new people coming through don't know any different, so they're quite happy catching the odd salmon in a year, which is great. You
Yep.
know,
I think you're right. I think the younger generation coming through, it's a given, isn't it, that it's catch and release, and there is
it's a,
much more,
given it's catch and release, but you're going to work hard for
and you
them,
got to
and they
work
mean
hard
more to you
for your
because of
salmon.
that.
Yeah, but that makes sense, doesn't it? If you're only catching one or two fish a year or whatever it is, you wouldn't. I think that the conservation leaning of the younger generation, which is more endemic amongst them anyway than it was of the elder generation, it just sort of fits, doesn't it? If you're going to spend money and time
Yeah.
and patience trying to catch one of these wonderfully rare wild animals, the last thing you want to do is kill it.
Yes. Yes.
Let's hope.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the younger generation go away. They go away with their friends. They just have a great time in the outdoors.
Mm.
There's so much more to salmon fishing. To go away with friends, it takes you to amazing places, doesn't it?
It takes out all the hard work of where should we go this weekend, or where should we go in the summer, guys, and or where should we go, family? We want to go
Yes.
to Scotland. Well,
Yeah.
if you bring salmon fishing in as your direction, as your yardstick, then you will never go to a disappointing place, right? They never reside in ugly places to Atlantic salmon.
I've got fishing in a couple of weeks' time on the Tweed, which is done, and for the last for the last 10 years, we go 3 days.
Where'd you go? Which beat?
We go to Lower North Walk and South Walk,
Lovely.
and we don't catch a huge amount of salmon. We all caught a salmon each last year. We only got 3 days, but we have barbecues. We have great time. We're in a cottage just at the end of the road, so we can have a dram in the hut and barbecues outside of the hut. We fish for trout in the evening sometimes if there's a spinner pool, and that's incredible. And we catch sea trout as well if we're in. And it's not just about the salmon; it's about the whole experience. And it's getting away for a break. Everyone's busy. It's a release.
It's time on the river, isn't it? And I think it should be less and less focus about actually landing a salmon, and more focus about being privileged enough to be in their environment, which is the river, and more often than not a very wild place. So I couldn't agree more. And what's not to like about that? And it's funny. I'm the generation between as you are. There's the elder generation who will
Yes.
go and they want numbers. That's what they want. They want an abundance of fish, and they're
Yes.
disappointed if they don't catch a fish,
Yeah.
and they're disappointed if they only catch
Yeah.
one or two fish. And then I remember that being the MO, that being why you go salmon fishing, is to catch as many salmon as you can, and the talks in the hut and the conversation in the pubs and in the
Mm.
local communities. And then all of a sudden it sort of changed about 10 years ago, I feel. Uh, and now it's not about that. And it took me a few years to change with the times, but I just wish that I'd felt like that when I first started salmon fishing. I'd have saved
Well,
myself a
you
lot
no
of
longer take them
disappointment.
for granted.
Yeah,
You no longer take them for granted,
no.
and we did take them for granted back then. Now to catch one salmon is a privilege.
Oh,
And that's a special fish.
yeah,
Um, yeah, absolutely, and it should be celebrated.
it should.
Just catching one fish, you know.
Okay, I want to move on to the next chapter, the exciting next chapter of your life, of your career, which is we're going all digital. We're moving away from the beautiful glossy sheets of trout and salmon, and we're moving into the digital age via Loop, and it's brand new brand new platform, brand new magazine, online magazine. Is that what we're calling the Take? I guess that's what it
It's
is, right? It's a digital magazine.
it's an online magazine, yeah.
It's an online
It is.
magazine.
It is, yeah.
So when I heard that you were taking over, I thought, well, yeah, that he'll manage that. It's not too much of a jump. He'll be fantastic in that role. But then, of course, it is a big deal. I've spoken to you during the transition, as you
Mm.
know, and you've given me a bit of insight, you and Jim Coates, into the mammoth task of launching an online magazine. Talk to me a little bit
Mm.
about that transition from Trout Salmon to the Take.
Yeah. So, first of all, obviously I've been doing travel salmon a long time, but I know now that I was possibly a little bit bored, and I've been doing it so long that I needed a change. I've come to a time in my life where I'm 60 in a couple of weeks' time, and I thought I need a new challenge. And Jim came along, and we got talking, and it transpired from there basically. And then to launch the magazine digitally, which I knew nothing about, and I'm still learning. Um, yeah, it's been a whirlwind really, but we've got a first issue out. The content's looking good, and it's just only going to get better as I get to know more and more good writers and photographers, which is what I'm spending a lot of time doing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's a global thing. Trout and Salmon was a UK based magazine, really. That's where the core market was,
Yeah.
and I was there to sell. I was there to sell magazines, and I've got a bit more freedom where I am now, and I'm really enjoying sort of looking at the global fly fishing scene, and meeting great people, that's so enthusiastic about what we're doing as well. So, and one of the key thing about the magazine, even though it is put together by people from Loop, is that I want it to be a magazine for everyone. Um, I'm gonna, yes, we have pictures of people using Loop Kit in the magazine and our ambassadors, but it's open for everyone, and I want everyone to enjoy it. And I might want it to make people want to go fishing and try maybe some travel, you know, and also to bring the knowledge of so many anglers around the world to your fishing as well. Wherever you may be in the world, I want people to, I want it to relate to you in some way.
The log line for Loop is wild fish, wild places.
Mhm.
Are you trying
Yeah,
to show us as many wild places and wild fish as possible? Is that the MO?
that's the idea. I want to celebrate wild fish in wild places and celebrate and protect those areas. I think if you can educate people about these places, and I'm learning about it too, let's tell people what's out there. And then, whether you're in Scotland or Labrador or wherever, these places need protecting. Yes, they're very wild, but they've all got their issues, with climate and everything, So, you look at what's happening on, New Brunswick, for example. In the first issue of the magazine, we did an article on the salmon there and how the stripers have impacted,
Yeah.
striped bass have impacted on those. Quite incredible, and worrying, really. And there's a balance to be found. Basically, the stripers are congregating in the river,
Mm,
and there's thousands of them. They're spawning there, and they're eating the smolts. So those salmon rivers are really affected. So there are issues everywhere, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And I think if we can educate people on that, as well as celebrating these beautiful places, that's surely one way of future protecting those places in the future.
So that's very ambitious, and I think a really really cool thing to achieve, to try and achieve, is to show people these far reach locations and these outposts, which compared to the rivers that we might fish on are certainly in much better condition health wise and have a healthier run of salmon, wild fish as a result, but still they face their challenges. I don't want to labor this, but the mental well-being, um, the idea of being out in nature, it's not just about it. Ironically, it's not just about the take. It's about so much more.
It's not just, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've got an article in the next issue, which is about a group of chaps that go out to Bahamas. And it's really about them. It's not much about the fishing. It's about how they get on in the lodge. They're all businessmen, how they're coping with the phones going and having to take time out, between casts to answer an email or whatever it might be.
Mm.
All those things are interesting. It's not about how to catch the fish. It's entertaining and interesting.
Oh, it's the human element, isn't it? And as you said a few minutes ago, it's about the characters that you meet. It certainly is for me, and it's and
Yes.
it's and it's that whole community, buying into that community and feeling that sense of passion, that sense of belonging, can't be underestimated. Andrew,
Yeah.
we're gonna move on to the final three questions, which I'm really excited about with you. I don't know whether you know this, but we ask all our guests the same final three questions on the last salmon. The first of which is, if you had £1 billion, how would you spend it in saving the wild salmon?
I would invest time in getting new people into fishing because they're our future. So I would try and get more youngsters into fishing, as I've said. Um, I think anglers are most invested in salmon, so I think we should be supporting and funding them on a local level to do conservation work locally. There is obviously lots of things. There are lots of things happening on the grand scheme of things, but there are also some great projects, you know, on the Free, for example, in the borders, various places where people are doing some great work with hatcheries. The counter thing is that, why not spend it on counters? Put a counter on every river, you know? That's, uh, I know that's it's long term, but you need some quick fixes as well. We need to look at every opportunity, including hatcheries, I feel. The other thing was I was in a hotel on the Tay coming when I was on the way back home, and I was eating breakfast, and half the people in the breakfast room were eating they ordered scrambled egg with salmon
Yeah, right.
on, right? And there needs to be some education there. And I know there are lots of things happening. There's the off the table campaign and things like that, which are really good. But majority of people aren't taking any notice and they don't care.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of education needed. I wonder, even imagine having starting a campaign to have billboards driving into London with pictures of diseased salmon and farm salmon. I think you've got to shock people. People need to know what's going on.
Yeah, certainly a big Times Square or Leicester Square billboards of salmon swimming around aimlessly in these pens with big open sores and what have you, the usual horror stories that we're, at least in the angler community, we're used to seeing, would certainly help for sure.
We're used to seeing them, yes, but maybe the public aren't.
Yeah, yeah. True.
The
I think
public, yeah.
the apathy. We've got to find a reason to cut through the apathy. But I think that's more of a widespread cultural problem. And let's not get started with that. Second question, Mr. Flitcroft. If you had no money, what would you do to save the demise of the wild salmon?
Well, I would get everyone to. It doesn't cost anything to tell your family and friends not to eat salmon,
Mm-hmm.
and none of our family eat salmon, and we're working very hard on friends.
And losing them at the same
Same,
time,
so,
if you're anything like me, one
and
comes
losing
up.
at
Yeah.
the same time, so don't take any notice, and
No.
you can't force it upon them, but we spread it thick. So yeah, that's one thing you can do.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
think, I think also just getting involved in some restoration. There are rivers, I'm sure, there are rivers out there that need help, with, um, sorting out rivers, whether that be trout or salmon, you know. I think, I have a bit of river that I work on and it's great fun and you learn a lot about the fish and what affects them, even hydrology and things like that. And I think getting involved in something like that's really interesting.
And it's interesting you should talk about that. You do it personally. It's a kind of form of gardening, isn't it? And if gardening, as we're often told, is a wonderful form of therapy, river gardening is exactly the same, which is what we're calling, which I think is the catch-all generic term for certainly for salmon restoration work on rivers. And how do people get involved in that? Because people come to me and ask, how do I help? How can I help with my local river? If you go to the Angling Trust website, I gather there's a portal there which offers up most local NGOs. Failing that, if you just Google your local river and conservation campaigns, there will always be something going on. You may not be living on a salmon river if you're listening to this, but you will certainly be living within 20 miles or so of a river, and there will be something that will need your help. So a simple 5-minute Google will give you the answer to that. I think that's a great answer, Andrew. Finally, and I've been looking forward to this one, it's your last day on Earth. Hypothetically, who would you fish with and where?
Okay, so I would find a river that's got an abundance of salmon. And there are rivers still in the UK that have got enough salmon. We probably have to go to the very far north of Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
And I would take a group of people that have never caught a salmon before but have always tried. Because just to see, I've seen quite a few people catch a salmon for the first time, whether they're grown men or boys, and that's an unforgettable feeling to sit and watch and see. And I remember that if you've caught the salmon, you'll know what it feels like, your very first one. And I think that's what I would do. I would take them there and hopefully they'd all catch a fish. And just to watch that would be quite incredible.
That's lovely. And you know what? No one has, to my mind, nobody has given that answer in the 3 seasons that we've been going. And of course, it's a really obvious one. It's sharing that initial catch, that initial connection to that wild animal is incomparable.
You just can't. You can't. And I've seen grown men, friends of mine, that have just been in pieces. You know, big burly men, builders and stuff like that, and they're in bits.
Well,
shaking and it's so special.
It's such a special thing. It's the biggest leveler, isn't it? You can have grown men crying. My daughter Nellie caught her first Atlantic salmon last year. I was in tears. There's just something so incredible about that moment. So brilliant. Good for you for wanting to share that amongst friends, amongst family, amongst anybody that's been trying and to date failed to experience that joyful thing. Andrew, thank you so much. That was really lovely. Thank you. Those were some fantastic answers there. And we just want to wish you the best of luck with the take. We urge listeners, viewers to go and have a look at this magazine. It really is special. It's very different to what you might expect. And Andrew isn't lying with his ambitions. It really does open up the whole world to anybody that wants to read about angling, anybody who wants to read about these interesting wild outposts that anglers and sort of pioneers in that respect go out and enjoy and experience, in the hope that it might help you get there too, if that's something that floats your boat. So the take, check it out.
Yeah, the take. Yeah, read thetake.com. It's free to look at, and I think, I just want to build a community of anglers that we're all in this. It's a platform. It's a platform for debate and sharing ideas, and fishing and pictures and everything that's great about fly fishing.
Email the mag's name that Andrew now edits and your name to info@thelastsalmonpodcast.com to win.